Hi, folks. Robert Quigley here, America's Independent, Washington, D.C. We're on the road to the White House. Join Quigley's Shadow Government, the Independence Talk Show, as we dissect the issues along the road to the White House. Look for us on your favorite podcast, radio, and TV stations. RobertQuigleyForPresident.com. Today we're going to start with voter questions. Richard Jankowski, someplace sunny USA. He says, government caused the inflation with too much money printing. Then they raised the interest rates and destroyed everyone's financial life. We need a constitutional amendment to limit the amounts that can be borrowed. Well, Richard, let's jump right in. First, part of the answer lies with incompetent politicians. And the other part of the answer includes the fact that the amount of cash and credit on the one hand and the amount of goods and services available in the economy on the other hand are out of balance. And then on top of that, we do have some confusion with statements like this because the government budget and John and Mary's budget are apples and oranges. And the general conversation across the news media and at kitchen tables is John and Mary's budget techniques are very often applied to how governments actually operate, which is incorrect. It leads one down the wrong road. So let's jump in and explain why. Well, first, governments can live until infinity, 5,000 years, 10,000 years, whatever the number is. So governments can always make more money, and they control the printing presses. So their time horizons are completely different. Now, when we compare that to the typical family of John and Mary, if they're lucky, they live 100 years. But their working years are going to be much less than that. They have to actually sell a product or service, including their labor, to actually get money. So the time frames are different. The way the money is obtained is different. And in the case of government, they're making it. In the case of John and Mary, they're earning it. So that's a huge confusion here. And then when we get to the inflation, Quigley is going to reform the Federal Reserve, and we're going to put the focus on maintaining the correct balance between the cash and credit on the one hand and goods and services and tangible products to buy and sell on the other hand. Because think about it for a minute. We can make everyone in the country a millionaire, and provided we had an enormous amount of goods and services to buy, it would not cause inflation, and everybody would be well off. And of course, the converse is also true. We could make half the population poor, which is where we are right now, and we can throw a lot of money at scarce resources, and what's going to happen? The price is going to go up. So we need to reconfigure the economic system, the Federal Reserve system, the interest rate management system, and to achieve a balance. And part of what the Quigley administration is going to do, we're going to create 30 million new business owners across America by tweaking the SBA. We're going to tweak the FHA, increase the amount of home ownership. And all of our other programs are designed to decrease the amount of expenses, to lower everyone's taxes, and to increase the amount of self-sustainable people and communities across America. So ultimately, that's the right approach when talking about inflation. And just for one elementary example, remember during the pandemic, there was always a shortage of toilet paper and paper towels. Well, because the factories were closed down, the supply chains were closed down. But of course, it was a commodity, everyone needs it, and of course, lots of people had money from the government, so prices were going to go up. So the next part of Richard's question is, he says, I listened to your material about climate change, but he's going to dispute with me. He's going to say, well, climate has been changing since day one of planet Earth, and it's going to change all the way until the last day of planet Earth, whether that's 5 or 10 billion years, however long it is. Well, Richard, that's absolutely right, but that's not the focus. The issue that we need to deal with as humans is humanity, mammals, the animals on the earth today, we have a very narrow range of both temperature and resources that we can live within. So we can't live on a planet that's too hot, or a planet that's too cold, or a planet that has too few resources. So on the one hand, it's quite true that the climate is constantly changing. But yes, we do have to worry about CO2 and CO2 concentrations and the use of fossil fuels, simply because we are warming up the planet. We're taking us out of that narrow survivable range of temperatures and resource that we must have to maintain our life on this planet. So let me just give you a couple of quick examples. If it's 120 degrees and the humidity is 10%, the body cannot regulate its own temperature. If it's 90 degrees and the humidity is 100%, the body cannot maintain its own temperature. So just from that little biomedical fact right there, we know that we are pushing the limits. The warmer we make the climate, the more uninhabitable parts of the earth becomes. We already have massive climate migration underway. We have droughts everywhere, water shortages everywhere, and resources. The next war, which may have already started in Russia and the Middle East, is ultimately a resource war. I mean, all wars are resource wars, but this is going to be the resource war of all resource wars. And that's the issue. It's not that we have a constantly changing planet, it's that we have a very narrow range of conditions that we must maintain, or we're history. All right, so moving on. Thank you very much for that question, Richard Jankowski. Moving on, we got a letter from a child. Now, when you're a presidential candidate, you're a public figure. This happens from time to time. I only know that the letter was mailed in Albany, New York, and from the contents of the letter, it looks like the child, probably late elementary school, somewhere in junior high school, was waiting for a bus after school one day to go home, penned this letter, but they didn't put a return address, they didn't put a name, they didn't put any kind of self-identifying characteristics that would lead one to where they are actually located. But like I say, this person is talking about activities in the Hudson Valley of New York. So the main concern of this child is apparently in all of the airports from New York City up to Albany, there are kids being dropped off, and they can be dropped off at any point in the day. But this child is saying that at 3 a.m. every morning, government buses show up at these local airports, and they take away children. And then, of course, the child is saying, "Holy cow!" Child dropped off at the airport. Child being picked up by bus. They disappear someplace. So this child is quite concerned that they don't want to be picked up by a government bus or go anywhere near an airport. But the reality of the situation is this is probably happening. We can all guess why it's happening. But just to finish the child's letter, the child went on to say that there was a girl that went missing during summer camp somewhere in the Hudson Valley. I think this was near Saratoga Springs. And they finally found her inside a closet in a trailer. And this child goes on to say that Hawaii has 200 missing children, and the ruler of Russia is stealing the Ukrainian children. All of these are actually facts. I mean, these are accurate facts. But I think the explanation here is, or the discussion is, we have to think about why in the world are kids being dropped off at the airports in New York? So what are the most likely answers? Well, number one, they're illegal immigrant families, and they have no ability to take care of the kid. We know this has happened all throughout the world, all throughout the country. And if a parent does not have an ability to take care of a kid, and they are absolutely at the point of despair and giving up, they may very well drop the kid at the airport or, police station, fire station, hospital. I mean, there are all sorts of public places where this has been happening over the course of America, because that parent will think that they can't provide what that child needs, and if they take him to a place that's public and very secure, very visible, the child will wind up in an orphanage or a welfare center of some sorts. So to this child who wrote this letter, who's obviously listening to these this radio show and talk show and a podcast, the government is not hurting these kids. The government is trying to help these kids. So they're being picked up, they're being properly housed and fed and taken care of. Now it's absolutely a heartbreak that they're losing their family. But you really got to step back and say, man, it takes a tremendous amount of hopelessness and despair for a mom and dad, if that was the case, to just leave their kid at an airport. I couldn't imagine it, but people are doing it. So we have a border problem. The border is open. We have people in this country who do not realize that we're not living in the early 1900s or the 1800s anymore, where the country was short on population. We have too many people in America. Climate migration is going to make this a bigger problem than it already is. Economic migration from all around the planet, wars, famine, that's all going to be a big problem. And this is just one symptom of it. And when Quigley gets to the White House, I'm going to close the border. There's no question about it. It's going to be the Andrew Jackson style. So when those days come, I hope that the court system understands that there are limits to what it can do and what it should be involved in. And this is one of the consequences of this. So anyways, amazing. Like I say, we receive these types of letters often, but this one we just want to assure this young writer somewhere in Albany, would be my guess, that those kids are not going to meet their doom. They are being taken care of. And of course, the child goes on and says that he thinks that the local politicians aren't talking about it or doing anything about it because they're afraid of some kind of retribution. True or false, I don't know, but doing the right thing and helping those in need that are in America and protecting our own interest, America first, is not any reason why anybody anywhere should be harmed or receive retribution. Doing the right thing is always the good course of action. So anyways, thank you so much from that young kid in Albany, New York. And onward we go. So the next thing we're going to do is we do have one more voter question toward the end, but we're going to shift over and talk about some of the campaign issues right now. And one part of the campaign discussion is we're going to talk a little bit about Nikki Haley and Trump. I mean, obviously everybody has both good points and bad points. So in the case of Trump, I've got other videos on the topic. His heart is in the right place in a lot of different areas. He just doesn't have the mental ability to solve the problems that America needs solved. Him and the right-wing solution are not going to advance the American cause. Although some of those solutions are on the right track, Trump just does not have the physical and intellectual ability to execute the job of the presidency with any kind of skill or measure of success. Now, I'm combining him with Nikki Haley today, and I'm gonna come back to her a little bit later. But Nikki Haley, who has found herself either second or third in the Republican nomination, I just want to say I think that Nikki Haley is another classic problem example of where the Republican Party has gone. She's against Social Security. She's against entitlement benefits. She's against Medicare. She wants to reduce these programs. Well, under a Quigley administration, that's never going to happen, simply because we must take care of our citizens. That includes the old, that includes the frail, that includes the sick as well as the strong and folks that can take care of themselves. It's an across-the-board situation. We have to make sacrifices to do what's right by our people. And if that means we got to live with, a $5 million lifestyle instead of a $10 million lifestyle, or a $500,000 lifestyle instead of a $1 million lifestyle, so be it, because the goal is to take care of people. So you see, Nikki suffers from spending very little time in the private sector. Okay, she's been a state legislator. She was a state governor twice. She was the UN secretary because of donations to the first Trump presidency. But the people on my team are going to, for the most part, have a lot of experience in the trenches, in the private sector, and they are going to appreciate the struggles that everyday Americans go through. And that's what American leadership needs. Now, one other negative point here I'll point out with Haley is, she suggested that all civil servants should be limited to a 5-year term. Again, this is ridiculous. The civil service is supposed to be the president's expertise. They're supposed to be the country's experts in any given area, in any given topic. And the idea that we're going to limit them to 5 years basically means we have a government that's even more incompetent than it already is. So when we have incompetence at the leadership level, and we also have inexperience and incompetence at the lower civil service level, we are in big trouble. We really will be in a situation where it's everybody for themselves. So her policy platform automatically excludes her from winning that Republican nomination. And the other little fact that we got to keep in mind is 25% of the U.S. economy is, of course, the government, which includes, federal, state, local, city, county. So the government's not going anywhere. The question is, how do we use it best? Now, when we hear things like Nikki Haley's words I've just described, she's really parroting rich donors who want a free hand to fleece America. Republicans and Haley and Trump, they're selling a failed philosophy that has nearly ruined America in the last 40 years. So Quigley's position is very simple. Big government must be used to solve big problems and to lift all American boats. Far-right current crop of candidates seek to destroy America and enslave its citizens from cradle to grave. A life in government makes one unqualified to lead this great nation. No, you have to live the life of everyday, ordinary Americans. That is what qualifies you to lead this great nation. Okay, let me move on a little bit. I'm going to switch gears. That was the negative of Nikki Haley. I've got positive stuff to say too, but I just wanted to put that on the table because I see the media playing Nikki for every dollar she's worth. And for the reasons I stated, she's not going to be the Republican nomination. But anyways, let's go on to the next issue. Trump's sentiment in the voter population versus Biden's sentiment in the voter population. I mean, if we've ever seen a situation where you got two groups of people that are supposed to be competing politically with each other to make the country better, we could not have two more diametrically opposed and separated groups than what we have right now with the far left and the far right. Not only are they not talking to each other, they're not even talking the same language, they're not even looking at the same things, and their goals are not even the same, and none of that is shared with half the population, which is where Quigley is. America's independent. So what am I talking about? Well, when we talk to voters around the country about the Trump sentiment, so go into your favorite diner, ask the voters, what do you think about Trump? Very often the answer is, we are on a downhill slide as a country. Inflation is making everybody poor, and they were better under Trump. And they say, between Biden and Trump, they're voting for Trump. But if you listen carefully and just scratch the surface a little bit, these so-called die-hard Trump voters will tell you that they have got their eye on other people. So they recognize that Trump has a lot of flaws, and they want to see somebody rise above the fray who can solve their problems, put the country on the right path. And of course, from the right's point of view, it's certainly not anybody on the left, and it's certainly not Biden. So that's interesting sentiment. It's like, I'm going to vote for Trump if I have to, but God, please give us Quigley, the independent, somebody who's going to solve this country's problems. So that's where we are. Now, when we look at the Biden sentiment, this is completely crazy. This could not have been made up by a Hollywood movie. Movie producer, that is. Real life is way stranger than Hollywood could ever make it. Because what is the left-wing agenda? They're trying to say people with all these extreme left-wing progressive ideas and lifestyles, They can do it too. They can lead too. Oh my God, I'm just as good as you. Let's make the society equal for everybody, whether they don't know what sex they are, whether they're not quite sure how the country should be organized. Whatever we do, let's just make it a utopian. Everybody can do the president's job. Well, the problem with that sentiment, immediately you can see, they are on the road to hold power because they basically are holding the Democratic Party hostage at the moment. Biden's totally incapable, and his mental faculties get worse and worse and worse by the day. But if you look at what they're trying to do, it's totally not helping America at all, and it's never going to help America. So the Quigley goal, of course, is to help all Americans, no question about it. So let's move on. We had a question from a voter, Kendra Murphy from North Dakota. And Kendra says, Quigley, what is your dream team? Well, I'm just going to name some names, and then we can talk about them in more detail later. But just to give you an idea of who I'm talking about, because I'm taking team players from across the society. Some of the people at the top of my list include Jamie Dimon. He's the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase. I would give an invitation to Liz Cheney. I would give an invitation to Nikki Haley because she does have some good points. She's not a leader, but she's in a good position to do some government jobs very well. So despite that I'm critical of her run for the White House, there are some places where she would do well in the campaign. Dean Phillips is another guy on the left I would bring into the mix. In addition to that, I would invite Kevin O'Leary. I would put him in charge of the SBA. I would make him the SBA administrator because you're never going to create 30 million new jobs. Robert Kennedy, I would put him in charge of the EPA. Again, he's not presidential material, but he is an environmental guy, and he would do well there. Cornel West has a place on the campaign. Robert Reich, he's an old guy, 77, but if he's got the health and the mental health, I would invite him and put him at Department of Labor. Andrew Yang, the guy who ran for president in 2020 and who founded the Forward Party, I would bring him on as well. So those are just some of the names I'm going to float, and there are many others that I'm considering. But how does Quigley win? It's very simple. First, you got to have the confidence to try, and then you never give up. Folks, go to robertquigleyforpresident.com. Donate what you can. All dollars, big and small, help the campaign. We are going to make America work for everybody. If you have any questions or you want some point elaborated or you want to take a contrary position, then go to the chat box and let me know what's going on and we'll address it. All the best.